Smile, empty soul. After all, you're only human. Your heart's full of chocolate spiders, twirling and feasting away at your very life essence, along with distant memories of vintage game shows such as Supermarket Sweep. Oh, it may have peaked in the 90s, but it's still cool, or at least the reruns are. I lived just to watch that rainbow cornucopia of contestants feverishly slam salamis and cat food into their carts before the timer ran out on their gameplay clocks and on their lives. But there's actually a long lost episode of Supermarket Sweep that aired at midnight on C SPAN as the result of a broadcast interruption. The episode begins with the usual 1990s SS host, Chris Darley, suckling on a cactus and not even bothering to spit out the pricklies. I don't know how he managed to pull that off, but his eyes looked like he hadn't slept in years, if such a feat was possible. It was as if he was waiting for me. Hello there, Kmart shoppers. A frizzled and unkempt Chris Darley with a ruffled Fred Flintstone clip-on tie exclaimed. It's time to take your pills! Chris Darley waddled around the supermarket set like a penguin, slipping on over to the pharmacy aisle and stealing several bottles of Flintstone's vitamins and chewing them rather obnoxiously with his mouth open. Yabba dabba, don't consume the rest of this episode. It would consume you, he exclaimed before falling over. I don't know how to explain it, but he frothed at the mouth, threw up boiling battery acid, and collapsed head first right onto the supermarket floor. His tongue was crooked, stiff, stretched out, as if it had served as a stretch Armstrong to a board-stiff orangutan. A man who looked an awful lot like Droopy Dog with drooping cheeks but bugged-out licorice blackened eyes pranced over to Chris as he prodded him repeatedly with the stick like a camper on speed who'd forgotten his glasses attempting to roast a s'more. Chris Darley's right eyeball flung out, still hopelessly attached to the nerve, and it rolled over into the meatballs. I shrieked in horror. That nerve was longer than a Peter Jackson film. I choked on the nipple of my blueberry baby bottle pop candy. Clean up on aisle 7, shouted a short man in emerald green powder makeup and a military helmet on, grabbing a bucket and a mop and swiping Chris Darley's rancid remains over to a dimly lit employee room. His toenails, chunks of flesh, and various hairs, including from Chris's unmentionables, littered the store floor somehow, as if they'd rained down from the heavens. Wasn't his corpse too fresh to fall apart like this? And why wasn't he leaking blood? There was some oil on the floor, but it was just a jar of store-brand olive oil that a hapless contestant had spilled over in a zombie-like state. That's what I call a supermarket sweep, the great Gazoo custodial character declared, high-fiving a mustachioed supermarket employee who, yes, that was definitely a Hitler mustache. The smock was simply doused in crimson liquid. Was it spaghetti sauce? Catsup? Or just blood? Neon lights blinked, revealing Supermarket Sweep was now a cartoon starring Brian Griffin from Family Guy. That didn't make any sense. If Family Guy hadn't existed yet, Brian sipped from his martini and blubbered on and on about the price of groceries and how his novel, Faster Than the Speed of Love, was too raunchy to be sold in supermarkets anywhere in the continental United States. He said that people wanted something else. Something saltier, squirmy, that sizzled off the grill. What was he going on about? Suddenly, a batch of ranch salad dressing oozed down from the ceiling like gunks of Nickelodeon slime, pouring down onto Brian Griffin and covering him in condiments, smothering him to death. Brian fell to the floor, limbs contorted, and barked out a final moan of anguish as he was now also dead. The mustachioed grocery store employee from earlier casually and callously walked over to Brian. I let out a gasp. Such absurd and obscene gestures! The grocery store employee stuck an entire orange, peel still intact, up Brian the dog's canine anus and began to chew off his ears as if they were a delicious beef Wellington. His teeth were inorganic, sanded down, and worse than any trip to the dentist I'd ever been on. I turned off the TV, but it somehow magically flickered back to life as if possessed by a Ouija board or some sort of mystic satanic dark arts. The screen mercifully turned back to C-SPAN. I was somewhat relieved, even though I always found C-SPAN Senate proceedings to be boring. The treasurer of Pennsylvania held up a .357 caliber Magnum revolver, ripping it out of an envelope and thrusting it into the roof of his mouth. Before a regular episode of Supermarket Sweep panned and zoomed into view from distorted static waves bending at CMYK reflex angles. The host of the show is now me. No, wait. It was a Leonardo DiCaprio lookalike, but with dwarfism. Very similar to me in how I do look. Leo had a tiny index card in his hand with a Pepto-Bismol logo on it. It made sense because he was taking shots from a purple-pink Pepto-Bismol bottle, as if it was a flask of whiskey. It's a wave or a particle, depending on if you're looking at it. Leo read off in a deadpan, rather similar to my own. A blonde-haired middle-aged woman with a beautiful dark chocolate skin hue buzzed in. Your face! She ripped out a .357 and shot little Leonardo DiCaprio right in the face. He splurted out various fruit juice flavors like a sinking flesh-built ship before all of the contestants slowly walked up little Leo's corpse like zombies from a Michael Jackson Thriller video. They ripped off his arms, squirting them with various facial fruit juices. Legs, finger and toenails, his tongue, small and large intestines, and they began to chew, slowly, contentedly, groaning. That's all we wanted. We didn't need any money. All we wanted to do was eat, but the food wasn't real. The food was never real. My TV shut itself off. I can never turn it back on. A year or so later, I gave up on it and smashed it to bits with a sledgehammer to let off steam. A few hours after that, I actually locked and bolted all the doors in my house, boarding up all the windows as well. I don't know why, but I suddenly felt like all of my neighbors wanted to consume me, and all of the produce in their homes was a lie. An unsavory lie. So that's why I went about correcting them a few weeks prior, slipping in around midnight and all. Anyway, the good news is I still have enough human body parts in the fridge and freezer to last me another several weeks. Oh, but don't mind me. Don't mind me at all. Just think of all the fun you could have on Supermarket Sweep. They might even invite you over for dinner.